Welcome back, Munchkins. I want to start off today by reiterating that this unit is called Consequences of Industrialization. And so it means that everything we've learned in this unit happens because of industrialization in the Western world. And one of the most significant and visible effects of industrialization in this period is the movement of people. From studying American history, you've probably heard about Ellis Island and probably about Angel Island and all that. Here, we're going to get even deeper. I know you're shocked. But why are these people coming to the US through Ellis Island when they are? Why this big rush of immigrants in the 1800s? Why can I buy Jamaican-style curry if curry is an Indian dish? Why are there Chinatowns throughout the world? Why were Japanese Americans put into concentration camps on the West Coast and in Hawaii? These are some of the questions that we should be able to answer at the end of this episode and the next. First, in this episode, I want to talk causes. As we do. One of the major causes or enabling factors behind this massive wave of movement in the 19th century were new transportation modes. Without steamships, railroads, canals, and telegraphs, this immigration wave would have been nigh impossible. People could travel farther and faster than ever before. Moving from rural areas depleted by industrial farming techniques to urban centers was easy and allowed you to go home and visit your family quickly. Moving technical experts, engineers, construction workers, scientists, soldiers, administrators, and so on to your colonies, if you had colonies, was easier than ever before. The British could put colonial office officials or administrators on a ship in Southampton and send them through the Mediterranean and Suez Canal to India, Burma, or South Africa in a matter of weeks. Easy peasy. These new technologies worked hand in hand with the newly globalized economy in which the Global South provided raw materials and natural resources for the North Atlantic world. We've discussed in previous episodes how and why this pattern emerged. As colonial areas were pushed towards plantation-based cash crop agriculture, artisan craftsmen became unemployed and sought labor on these plantations. As slavery was abolished around the world, plantation agriculture still remained deeply entrenched, producing sugar, tea, cotton, cacao, and opium. Workers were still needed, and now, without slavery, the cheapest laborers were immigrants, desperate for work and eager for any kind of wages. Indian migrant laborers, who were often derisively called coolies, could be found spread throughout the British Empire, in Burma, East Africa, and the Caribbean, also in South Africa as well. Most often, these male laborers were too poor to pay for their travel, and so became indentured servants to work off their transport fees. Chinese laborers, pushed out of China by the instability of post-Opium War Qing catastrophes like the Taiping Rebellion and failed self-strengthening, did the same, moving throughout Southeast Asia into places like French Indochina, what becomes Vietnam, Australia, the Caribbean, and the Western United States. 19th century indentured servants found it easier to work off their contracts than indentured servants from past centuries, but conditions on the plantations remained heinous, and migrants were often seen as subhuman, something we'll get more into depth in the next episode. Industrialization, the mechanization of agriculture, improved sanitation, and access to medicine and vaccines also created a population boom in industrialized nations. In Meiji Japan, for example, modernization and the resulting population growth for that modernization created population pressure that could only be relieved by a twin policy of emigration and imperialism. The stress on Japan's resources allowed Japanese politicians to double down on expansionist policies, which will have big payoffs in the next few units, and also allow selective emigration that would boost Japan's standing among the great powers. Poor manual laborers weren't really what Japan wanted to export. It would make them look bad, they felt. So they tried to coach and select their migrants with care, unlike other regions who sought to offload those whom they saw as a burden on their institutions. That same population boom, coupled with economic opportunity and also hardships, drove migration from Europe to the United States and to South America during this period as well. Something you've no doubt heard about is the Irish potato famine. On my resources Padlet, there's a series of really great podcasts about it from Steph Humison history class. But essentially, because of the blight that swept through Ireland, dismissive British policies to deal with the crisis, and a history of political turmoil and discrimination, millions of Irish fled the Emerald Isle for greener pastures in the United States. Fewer went to England and Canada, but the lack of old aristocratic institutions and fairly open-minded immigration policies pushed many Irish to the ports of Boston and New York, where they were instrumental in driving industrialization and the construction of the railroads. Chinese and Japanese migrants were also pivotal in the railroad, and all three groups, instead of being cheered for their contributions, faced steep retaliatory treatment from nativist Americans during the period. We'll talk more about this in the next episode. Italians also emigrated in large numbers to both the United States and to South America. During and after the Wars of Unification in the 1860s and 1870s, large land reorganization policies and improvements in healthcare and infrastructure led to a population boom that the newly formed institutions of the Kingdom of United Italy really just couldn't deal with. Millions of Italians left southern Italy and Sicily in search of work and bread. This Italian diaspora, which is the spreading out of a population, landed in the northeastern United States, their main destination, and in Argentina and other South American countries. Besides indentured servants and those seeking better economic opportunities, another group to migrate around the world was convicts. The British first started using the sentence of, quote, transportation for unwanted convicted felons with their American colonies. But as those became independent, they sought other places to send their undesirables. Australia and other large islands grew into penal colonies, where prisoners would be shipped and then used as forced labor to construct infrastructure such as roads, railroads, and ports. Their settlements were typically not in the nicer areas, so it wasn't a vacation being sent to Australia, and the living was rough. It also made it difficult for them to go back to their previous lives when their sentences were done. The labor provided by these migrants, whether forced or free, is indicative of the fact that newly globalized capitalist economy that we see develop in this period, while it was shiny and new in many ways, continued to rely on forms of forced and semi-forced labor. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get all my AP World History videos.